They are bringing more arms into these areas, and thus they are taking foreign citizens hostage, including thousands of young students. Students who were studying in Ukraine were held at the Kharkiv train station. More than 100 Indian students were held at the train station, and neo-Nazis also fired on Chinese students in Kharkiv, and 2 of them were wounded. I would like to repeat that hundreds of foreigners would like to leave these combat zones, but they are not allowed to do so. They are being held hostage, or it is suggested that they cross the combat zone and make their way to Poland, which would be very dangerous. Our soldiers have supplied corridors in all of the combat areas to allow for the passage of evacuees, of foreign evacuees in particular. And once again, I would say that I would underscore that it is the nationalists that is prohibiting the evacuation of these foreigners. And in fact, they tell foreigners to address the authorities from their own countries rather than to address the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The neo-Nazis behave even worse with their own citizens. They're using them as human shields in cities and in the popular Republic of Donetsk. We have seen that there are inhabitants that are being housed in buildings where cannons are kept on the ground floors and snipers are on the roofs. Only fascists behave in such an inhuman way. When the Soviet troops were fighting against them to liberate the Ukrainian territory in the past. Once again, our soldiers are doing everything to avoid human loss, in particular the loss of the lives of foreign individuals living in Ukraine, because we want to support all of those who are fighting on our side, and all soldiers who are taking part in this special operation in Ukraine. There will be 7,221,000 rubles. There will be a monthly indemnization for the families of every soldier that falls in combat. And I consider that we should also make payments to all of the family members of those who have participated in this combat. We have 5 million rubles to dedicate to this. All of the wounded combatants will also receive payments to pay for their care. If a professional soldier can no longer work, for example, he will receive 2,600,000 rubles. If he can no longer work, he will receive monthly payments. There will also be extra payments for soldiers who have been wounded, going up to 3 million rubles. Once again, I would underscore that our soldiers and officers are fighting in the Ukrainian territory for Russia, for life, for the life of the inhabitants of Donbass, for demilitarization, for denazification, and so that the threat created by Western powers on our frontiers will no longer exist, in particular the nuclear threat, as it has been evoked recently. We will continue to remember our companions at arms who have lost their lives, to support we will do everything to support their families, their children, that they may continue their studies. And I would ask you all to pay tribute to the fallen soldiers in Ukraine during a minute of silence.
Пожалуйста. Уважаемые товарищи, хочу сказать, что специальная военная операция
Comrades,
идет в строгом соответствии с графиком.
the special military operation is taking place as planned
Успешно решаются.
for the objectives that we have set.
Прошу.
And our objectives are being achieved with success and in a timely manner. And I will give the floor now to Sergei Kuchevich, the representative of the Ministry of Defense.
We were listening to an extraordinary speech there from Vladimir Putin, coming live from Moscow, speaking to the Russian people and, of course, to the world. We, of course, are bringing it to you live, talking about the fighting, the special military operation, as he insists on calling the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He's talked again about the demilitarization of Ukraine being the aim, and talked about the denazification once again as being the aim too. This is something that's been proven by all observers to be total nonsense and something that's fabricated by Putin in order to launch this invasion of Ukraine. We're going back now to hear Vladimir Putin speak some more.
And even when they are wounded, they remain in the ranks and they sacrifice their own well-being and even their lives to save their companions at arms. During the fighting, we have seen several examples of heroism. The Brigade number 100 under Colonel Bergama, which was able to break through several defensive lines that had been reinforced and built by the nationalists over a period of 8 years. The commander of the tank unit was able to eliminate 5 enemy tanks. The company 126, Alexei Livkin, the commander of that unit, encountered a nationalist unit with 15 tanks and 6 armored vehicles. And Captain Lufkin and his men destroyed all of the tanks and armored vehicles without any loss of human life on our side. And I signed an order for Lieutenant Magonevov for a posthumous recognition. Alas, he led his men in combat with strength and heroism. He defended his soldiers, and even when he was severely wounded, he fought until the end. He exploded a grenade that killed himself and the enemies surrounding him. They are neo-Nazis who torture and kill the prisoners that they take. I am deeply Russian. I am only Russian in my genes. But when I see Lieutenant Magnubov, for example, who comes from Dagestan, and I could say that is my ethnicity. There are more than 300 ethnic groups in Russia, and I think you understand me when I say that we are all Russian, and I am proud to be part of this people, the strong, powerful Russian people that is made up of so many different ethnic groups. And I will never give up on my conviction that the Ukrainians and the Russians are one people. And this despite the fact that many Ukrainians have been led astray by nationalist propaganda or have been intimidated. Some have consciously followed the nationalists, the partisans of Bandera. These are the same people that stood by Hitler during World War II. And the fact that we are fighting against neo-Nazis is proven by the way the war is being carried out. The hostilities are being carried out. Neo-Nazis, ultra-nationalists, and mercenaries from the Middle East use civilians as human shields. We've seen photos that show how they put heavy military equipment in the center of cities. They act like bandits rather than fulfilling their promise to remove this military material from residential areas, hospitals, and elsewhere. On the contrary, they continue to put mortars and artillery and tanks in these areas, and they have taken thousands of young foreign students as hostage. These are students who were studying in Ukraine, and for more than 24 hours, 3,000 Indian students were held hostage, and over 500 Chinese students were held hostage in Sumy. Others were in Kharkiv, and they were not allowed to leave. Hundreds of foreigners would like to leave the combat zone, but they are not allowed to do so. They are basically held hostage, or it is suggested that they leave through Poland. That is, they would have to cross the entirety of the combat zone, which is, of course, very risky for them. We have offered evacuation corridors in all of the combat zones.
We are breaking out of this pronouncement, this speech from the Russian President Vladimir Putin. We've heard him talk about the aim of the special military operation, as he insists on calling the invasion of Ukraine by his troops. He says it's going to plan. Success as planned will happen, he says. We will destroy this anti-Russia created by the West, is what he says. He's described people in Ukraine, those in charge, as neo-Nazis who torture and kill the prisoners they take. There is no proof to back up anything that Vladimir Putin is saying. And basically it seems to be a repetition of many of the untruths that he has spouted in order to justify what is happening and what his troops are trying to do to Ukraine. We'll have all the news about what's been happening on the ground in a moment. Let's get some analysis of what this speech means. Philip Turle is with us, our international affairs editor. This sounds like a man who, in some way, is living in a parallel universe.
I think that is a pretty good way of summing it up. We've had a press conference earlier this afternoon from Volodymyr Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine. You would really not think that these two men were facing it off because they are just on two different planets. And that is what Volodymyr Zelensky said. He said, we don't have nuclear weapons. We're not part of NATO. What is it that Russia wants? Russia just wants to take hold of Ukraine. Then we have this speech from the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. And the word which jumps to mind is chilling. I mean, it shows absolutely no remorse, no way that he's going to change his mind. He is absolutely fixated on the idea that Ukraine is overrun with neo-Nazis, by nationalists who are torturing students, who are torturing the people, who are putting military supplies in residential areas, in hospitals, and then saying that they've been either brainwashed or intimidated by neo-Nazis, the people of Ukraine, who were on the same side as Hitler during the Second World War. I mean, these are very, very grave accusations against the leadership of Ukraine. And any, I think, thought that caused by Emmanuel Macron, the French president, to Vladimir Putin this morning, the negotiations going on at the moment between Ukrainian and Russian forces, Russian mediators on the border with Belarus, are going to move this whole process forward to try to reach some kind of diplomatic solution, a withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine. It just seems like, a million miles away, something that is just not possible at the moment. And the longer this goes on, the worse it seems to get. And Emmanuel Macron, the French president, who spent an hour and a half on the phone earlier today with Vladimir Putin, came out of that phone call saying that he now feared the worst, and that it was obvious in a communique from the Elysee Palace, the French presidential palace, that Vladimir Putin had his sights on the whole of Ukraine. This was not just him saying he wanted to take back control of the Donbass region where there are Russian separatists. He wants to take hold of the whole of Ukraine. So he's coming up with these excuses to try to convince himself, and I think he is convinced, that it's run by neo-Nazis, by nationalists who are killing people, preventing people from leaving. There are a bunch of terrorists, and that is why he is justified in sending in Russian troops. And unfortunately, where we stand right now is that this situation is going from bad to worse, Mark, and there doesn't seem to be any hope anywhere of any kind of solution in the short term.
Emmanuel Macron, Philip, trying to keep the channels of communication open, and one can see why that might be a useful thing to do, to keep an access to the ear of Vladimir Putin, to have that ability. And obviously, perhaps Emmanuel Macron best placed to do that and talk to both sides in some way, shape or form. But I'm wondering how someone as pragmatic as Macron is, and as clear-sighted as he seems to be, how does he get through to someone like Putin, who is, as we've just been through, talking about denazification, harking back to collaborating with the German Nazis during the Second World War, trying to create this sort of fabric of untruths, to trying to create a justification for what he's now trying to do in destroying part of Ukraine.
Yeah, I think we have to be very careful here, because Emmanuel Macron has been one of the world leaders who's tried the hardest to get through to Vladimir Putin over the last few months, and especially with this trip to Moscow, where they were both sitting at either end of this very long table a couple of weeks ago. I think there was some hope that Putin would take Macron seriously, as he was not only president of France, he was also representing the whole of the European Union, of which France is the current rotating president of the European Council. But all of that doesn't seem to have had any effect on him at all, because I think now people are beginning to understand that the decision to invade Ukraine was taken a while back, and all of this diplomatic flurry of activity was just a sideshow. But the decision had been made by Vladimir Putin to actually go in there and do this. And the message is coming out of France right now. I don't know how long these negotiations or these telephone calls will carry on between Vladimir Putin and Emmanuel Macron, but maybe for Emmanuel Macron it wouldn't be such a good idea to keep talking to Vladimir Putin, for the simple reason that Putin could use this as a way of saying, well, yes, the door is still open, I'm still talking to the French president, and at the same time not taking any notice and doing exactly the opposite of what Macron is proposing. And all this at a time when Emmanuel Macron, on this very day, is expected to announce his plans to run for a second term in office in the French presidential elections, which are due to take place next month. So it's difficult to say, but I think what the Elysee said today was that from that phone call, Putin has said that Russia's goals of demilitarization and neutral status will be achieved in any case. So there is no way out of what Russia wants. Any attempts by Kiev to delay negotiations will result in Moscow adding even more items to the list of demands, making it even more complicated for Kiev and also the rest of the international community to find a way out of this. So Macron saying he was pessimistic after that phone call with Putin, and Putin wanting to take control of the whole of Ukraine. And that's something we've just witnessed with this televised address that Vladimir Putin has just made. So it looks like, for the moment, no way out.
Philip Till, our International Affairs Editor, thank you for that analysis of that quite remarkable speech you just witnessed from Vladimir Putin. We're basically announcing that it continues, and it will continue until, as he put it, they've destroyed this anti-Russia created by the West. He's talking about Ukraine.